RPN, the Roddenberry Podcast Network.
This episode of Mission Log is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Protect your internet privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/missionlog, and you can get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free. That's expressvpn.com/missionlog to protect your data.
This episode is also brought to you by Eaglemoss Hero Collector and the brand new The Orville Official Ships Collection. The first ships in this collection, including the Orville itself, are available now at herocollector.com/Orville. Use code MISSION10 at checkout to get 10% off your purchase with free shipping.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 382, Blaze of Glory.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. At Mission Log, it is our mission to evade marauding soldiers, navigate smoky caverns, and rescue the innocent, all so we can share with you the morals, meanings, and messages of Star Trek.
This week, Blaze of Glory, where at least one of our characters will go out what's the phrase? Help me.
I know. In like a lion, out like a lamb.
No, see, you're so close, but it's...
maybe it was out in a flash.
Whatever it is, it'll come to me. While I'm thinking on it, perhaps you can tell our listeners how to reach us.
Mission Log relies on your participation, so that's why we want to hear from you. Help us spread the word by giving us a like or a share on Facebook or Twitter, where you'll find us at Mission Log Pod. Your reviews at Apple Podcasts help other people find the show, and we do appreciate it. You can reach us on Skype at Mission Log Pod or by calling 323-522-5641. Our email address is missionlog@roddenberry.com, and remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log.
We'll hit trivia in just a moment, but first a quick word from our friends at Eaglemoss and the Orville Collection. So, this collection, tell us about it. Norman, tell us all about the Orville official ships.
Well, if you would indulge us a little bit here, audience, and let us deviate from our normal Star Trek conversation, we'd like to talk about the Orville Official Ships Collections by Eaglemoss. And this collection is developed in partnership and based on Seth MacFarlane's hit science fiction comedy drama, and the ships of this brand new Orville Ships Collection are available only from Eaglemoss Hero Collector. The first ships in the collection, the Planetary Union ship, the USS Orville, ECV-197, and its shuttle, the ECV-1971, are available right now directly from the Eaglemoss shop for only $29.95 each, with free shipping. There's even an oversized XL edition of the Orville available for only $74.95. No matter what you order, use code MISSION10 at checkout to get 10% off your entire purchase.
Now, what I love about everything from Eaglemoss, whether it's the Star Trek collection or the Orville collection, anything they make, is that they are professionally done with meticulous detail. So, of course, these are based on careful study of the models created for use in the series. They are highly detailed. They're made out of die-cast metal and high-quality ABS materials, and then they are hand-painted to get that stunning, perfect accuracy. Each ship also comes with a display base, plus a collector's magazine filled with concept art, interviews, and behind-the-scenes details of the Orville TV series. Additional ships are slated to join the collection soon, but these are the ones you want to get right now while you can.
And remember to double-check your list to check out who's naughty, who's nice, and... well, naughty or nice, that's kind of the Orville shtick, so it doesn't really matter what you choose.
All of the above, right?
All of the above. So full details, including comprehensive views of each ship and ordering information, can be found at herocollector.com/Orville. Use code MISSION10 at checkout to get 10% off your entire purchase. And now, with, I'm not going to say it's like kind of a hero slash villain slash approach to the trivia. Here's John Champion. I'm not exactly sure where he's going to go with the trivia, but he's always a hero in my book.
Oh, thank you, Norman. So kind of you. Well, here we go. Today's episode is written by Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolfe. And here we have an episode written by a couple of producers and obviously frequent writers credited to the show, really meant to serve a purpose to the series overall. The intention, the closer that we get to the end of Season 5, was to wrap up loose plot threads. Earlier, we settled what was happening with the Klingons. Then we shifted Dukat and the Cardassians back to a new thread along with the Dominion. Now it's time, from Ira's point of view, to wrap up the Maquis storyline once and for all. In the director's chair, we have Kim Friedman. You may recall that we mentioned Kim when she picked up her first science fiction directing gig ever back in Season 2 of DS9 with The Wire. She'd gotten her start in TV directing in the 70s with Mary Hartman. Many TV comedies followed, like Square Pegs and Alice, and a full 8 episodes of The Love Boat. Now, this is the last time we will see her credited on DS9, but we will catch up with her again in the early seasons of Voyager. There is a great use of a practical effect here in the Badlands. Those plasma filaments, so those flaming columns, those were created by Gary Hutzel, and it was basically a powerful fan that they had turned upside down and put on the bottom of a walled-off column made of drywall, and they filled that column with nitrogen gas, then ignited propane in there and turned up the fan, and boom, instant fire plumes. And we also have an extensive redress of the set we saw last week as the Gaia Village. Those rooms were trashed and repainted to make the Maquis areas for this episode. And let's talk about guest stars. Well, we mostly have our expected recurring roles. There's Aaron back as Nog, there's JG back as Martok. And that whole plot line was really a way that the writers were just trying to signal to the audience that the Klingons were still around. Martok was okay after the events of Soldiers of the Empire. And I really like little things like that, instead of just having characters completely disappear until a new story needs them again. And Kenneth Marshall, of course, is back as Michael Eddington, and we're fairly certain for the last time. Have to double check on that. Finally, we meet Rebecca, played by Gretchen German. Gretchen got her start in the 80s, and in addition to the guest roles that she did then, picked up a few recurring on series like Wings and Home Improvement. After DS9, she shows up in Will and Grace and Modern Family, along with several TV movies and short films. This is her only Trek appearance.
Sisko and his sworn enemy, a man who betrayed his oath to Starfleet, stuck in a runabout together for an entire trip. Shall we pass the time with some show tunes?
Prologue. Dinner time with the Siskos, and Nog is the special guest. He reveals to the captain that he's having a very tough time in his new security job on the station. It's the Klingons. They bully him and don't show him any respect. Sisko says maybe he needs to act a little more Klingon himself next time by showing them they can't intimidate him. And as if on cue, General Martok comes in, but not to mess with Nog this time. He's got important news. He intercepted a fragment of a message from what remains of the Maquis. It's from a woman to Michael, stating that the missiles have been launched and will reach their target, Cardassia, in 13 days. Martok believes the Maquis use Klingon cloaking devices to hide the missiles. If they hit the target, they'll kill millions. The Cardassians, with the protection of the Dominion, will retaliate by starting a war with the Alpha Quadrant. Act 1. Dax and Worf were unsuccessful looking in the Badlands for a launch site. They also drew the attention of the Jem'Hadar, since the Defiant's warp engines were easy to track even while cloaked. Captain Sisko will try another tactic then. He'll go right to the only Maquis named Michael he can think of, Michael Eddington, right there in a Federation prison. As you might expect, Eddington is in no mood to cooperate. He denies knowing anything about the message, and he taunts Sisko that he'd never find the launch site, much less know a code to remotely disarm the missiles. Even when Sisko pleads with him that millions upon millions of people will be killed in the ensuing war, even offering up a pardon, Eddington is unmoved. Tensions on DS9 are running high as word of the coming attack on Cardassia makes the rounds. Even Morn freaks out and bashes Quark in the noggin before running off to the Bajoran temple. A message comes through to Ops, though, from Captain Sisko. He's on his way to the Badlands in a runabout, since the Defiant would attract too much attention. And he has a guest with him, Michael Eddington. Act 2. On board the runabout, oh boy, these two are going to have a long trip ahead of them. Eddington is complaining about the replicated food, how he got used to how much better the real thing is when he grew it himself with the other Maquis. He wonders if the tomatoes he planted are completely destroyed, but Sisko reminds him that literally everything will be destroyed if they don't complete this mission to stop the missiles. But Eddington isn't in the least bought into the mission. As far as he's concerned, he's already a dead man and has no reason to help the Federation with anything. He holds his grudge against Sisko, the one who kept corralling the Maquis until they were easy targets for the Cardassians. Even Ben's old friend, Cal Hudson, was among the casualties. Cal forgave Ben, though, which Eddington says is more than what Ben did for any of the Maquis. Eddington believes he had the Cardassians on the run, that they were on the verge of a military victory. But Sisko brings him back to reality that all he did was push them to the Dominion, and now this is a whole other ballgame. Back on DS9, Nog and Jake are at Quark's bar while a bunch of very raucous Klingons are headbutting each other for fun. Nog is so ready to assert himself when they get out of hand, but he humiliates himself by tipping back too far in his own chair and hitting the ground. It's been long enough on the runabout that Eddington falls asleep as they enter the Badlands. Sisko wakes him up, though, and points out that 2 Jem'Hadar warships have arrived and are closing in fast. With Sisko out of his element, he casually releases Eddington from the handcuffs he's been wearing, makes himself a cup of Ractigino, and then sits back, wondering if Eddington will take over the helm. Perhaps his death wish isn't as pronounced as he claims. Taking the bait, Eddington shakes the Jem'Hadar at least for a moment by hiding their warp signature around a plasma filament. But as Sisko maintains his hands-off approach to this predicament, Eddington says he'll get him to the missile launch site, then he's going to kill him. Act 3. The Jem'Hadar were only fooled for so long. They're back, and Eddington has a new plan to lose them. There's a lot of teching the tech, but the long and short of it is that Sisko will have to do something very dangerous that amounts to changing the tires on your car while it's going down the highway at full speed. While Eddington flies, Sisko will go into a Jeffries tube and realign the impulse flow regulators, which will leave plasma exhaust that they can ignite. It's rough, but it does the trick. We're now down to 2 Jem'Hadar ships, and we have a slightly shaken Sisko emerging from the procedure, demanding that Eddington get them to their destination. Checking in with Nog on security detail, the Klingons are, how dare they, loitering on the promenade. It's just the chance he needs to make a stand. And what do you know? General Martok sees Nog as either very brave or very stupid, but it works. The Klingons disperse, and maybe Nog has earned a little respect. Eddington and Sisko arrive now at the very well-hidden Athos 4, where the missile launch site awaits, and so does a long, winding labyrinth of caverns occupied by Jem'Hadar soldiers. Act 4. The firefight starts, and if not for the fog in the caves, Sisko and Eddington are at a distinct disadvantage. Sisko throws himself into the fray, though, at one point using a pipe to take on a Jem'Hadar, while Eddington makes the fatal shot. It's all about protecting Eddington, who can prevent the missiles from reaching their target. As they wander through more of the caves, they come across a disturbing sight. The bodies of dozens of people, Maquis who were murdered by the Jem'Hadar. Eddington can't believe it. He thought the Cardassians were on the run, that the Maquis were going to declare themselves an independent nation. Sisko reminds him of the mission, though, that they still have a chance to save millions of lives if they stop the missiles. When they arrive at a locked doorway, Eddington punches in the code to get them in. Inside, there's a ragged group of Maquis survivors. Among them, a woman whose face we saw in the intercepted message. She's Rebecca, Eddington's wife. Act 5. So about those missiles, well, you see, I'm afraid there aren't any. That story was just a way to get some attention. It was Rebecca's way of letting Eddington know that they had arrived at this spot. If Sisko hadn't dragged him along from prison, he says he would have volunteered. No missiles, no Dominion War, but that does not mean that all is okay. Sisko is royally peeved about being lied to, and he lets his fist take out his aggression on Eddington's face. They'll need to get it together, though, and get everyone to safety aboard the runabout. While the others rush, Eddington and Sisko fire off as many shots as they can on the approaching Jem'Hadar, but one of those shots lands right on Eddington. Wounded, he tells Sisko to go on, that he'll continue the fight while the others get to safety. He does the best he can, trying to distract the Jem'Hadar with the idea that there are more of the Maquis fighting back, but it's too late. His shots aren't enough, and Michael Eddington is finished, breathing his last word, Rebecca. Captain Sisko, meanwhile, has gotten everyone back to the runabout, including Rebecca. Back from the mission, Sisko and Dax have time to reflect on Eddington and the plight of the Maquis. He died fighting for what he believed in, loyal to the bitter end. The end.
So, John, I want to give you a +1. It's been a long time since we've done this, but I want to give you a +1 because you brought back teching the tech.
Oh, yeah, that old writer's note. It felt good to squeeze that in here. You know, there's obviously a little less teching the tech in DS9 than there was, say, in Next Gen, but, it feels right sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, they had to tech the tech about I believe it was tricking our taste buds because we were tasting reconstituted carbohydrate molecules.
Yes, there was that too. Oh, I'm going to get into that. I'm going to make a big deal out of that at some point. You will see. But before we get to that, we can talk about food of a different sort. I do think, and maybe it's just me, that the squid with tube grubs looked a lot like mac and cheese.
Right?
It looked good. It looked a lot like mac and cheese and maybe like a nice white cheddar based on a bechamel sauce. Just, hey, so good for them. Also on the table, a green salad, some rolls. And yes, it just proves that old point that, yes, you can enjoy something and then be completely repulsed by it if you learn it's something disgusting. It happens. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was mac and cheese or shells and cheese. But then I took a closer look. I'm like, yeah.
Did you? Yeah, I went into the freeze frame. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I was like, ooh, that looks really good. Tube grub puree notwithstanding. Mm-hmm. So when Captain Sisko tells Nog, the next time Klingons refuse to acknowledge your presence, do what a Klingon would do, confront them about it. If you stand up to them, you'll earn their respect. Mm-hmm. So it's good advice when you understand exactly what's being said here. And I promise to return to this point later.
Okay. Very good.
I want to set the tone right now.
Okay. Nice. Mm-hmm. Nice. I look forward to that. All right. Oh, I do like the line that Martok has, a saber bear is most deadly when it is trapped with no hope of escape. That's good. That's sort of like a long way of saying that a cornered animal is dangerous, And
I do believe, John, wasn't he saber bear hunting on... Was it Kang's?
Yes.
It was Kang's summit?
Yes. They mentioned exactly.
And then he was abducted by the Dominion.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Very good, yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, and so nice to say hello to an old friend. Hey, Regular One, we see you.
Right.
Yes.
How is that, like, when people were watching this, how we're like, hey, look, it's Space Lab Regular One.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah. It was
super grainy stock footage too.
Yeah, definitely stock footage. Beautifully backlit, but it kind of didn't fit the rest of the show. But that's okay. Always nice to see Regular One. That's all right. Mm-hmm. And man, Morn, just a crazy man. Can't shut him up. He panics easily. Runs around naked.
In space, John, no one can hear you streak.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
That's going on a poster of Morn. But that whole strange, that whole scene with Quark being treated for Morn's outburst, it really felt like filler. And, it was another one of those sort of contractual obligation scenes, which I know they're trying to make something of it, and they're trying to express how freaked out people on DS9 would be. I get it. Like there is some valuable information there, but it really felt like filler. And by the way, Bashir's technology is taking a very long time to heal Quark. Because normally, he'd wave the little flashy light thing over his head. You cut away, you cut back, and he's done. He's good, Oh, and I do want to talk about that replicator entree number 103. Curried chicken and rice with a side order of carrots. Or as Michael Eddington says, replicated protein molecules and textured carbohydrates. Okay, now maybe I'm starting to rethink my idea about replicators because that sounds more like an old school 23rd century food synthesizer than an actual replicator, Because a replicator, they sort of imply that it just takes molecules, boom, 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 and like a person trapped in the pattern buffer of a transporter, you are literally recreating that thing. Whereas this, it sounds like you have some raw materials, proteins, carbohydrates, and then the computer is sort of, for lack of a better word, like 3D printing that thing to make it look and taste like what you expect. So maybe on a runabout, it's not as good.
I wish maybe the writers could have just taken a little bit of a leap and said, my chicken sandwich and coffee.
Yeah, yes. Right.
Because,
Yep.
Because they do like the Raktajino on a runabout.
Yeah.
Or at least Sisko does.
Yep.
I do like the fact that in the conversation that Eddington and Sisko had, that Eddington was kind of like, Eddington was using the memory of Cal Hudson against Sisko. I really like that he referenced him again because we haven't heard about him or his exploits since the Maquis.
Yeah.
Because in, say, the subsequent episodes about, say, the Maquis, their crimes against the Federation or against Cardassia for the uniform and for the cause, he was never really mentioned. So seeing Sisko respond to hearing that name speaks volumes about how he held Cal Hudson in such high regard.
Right. There's something that I really love about that scene, too, which is, for me, striking the right balance between creating a long story arc versus a short kind of self-contained thing. This story, when you have a moment like that, can actually work really well on its own. If I had not seen that episode with Cal Hudson, based solely on Avery's reaction to that, based solely on the information they're getting out in the scene, you can understand this was a friend. He was in the Federation. He joined the Maquis. They had this huge falling out. There was forgiveness and not forgiveness. But if you've seen the episode, then clearly you have an appreciation and understanding about the depth that they went to in that. So I thought it was just a perfectly placed, really nice scene. And the writers had known that they weren't bringing back Bernie Casey as Cal Hudson. So what a good way to just give that story some finality. Let's talk about something else very painful, Klingon headbutts. Because, look, I know that those are stunt performers doing a stunt. They looked and sounded painful.
Not painful enough by Martok's estimation.
No, I know. right. Yeah.
So we did Soldiers of the Empire a couple episodes ago, and so color me surprised. But we were trying to make a case for the Klingons to be not this head-butting, drunken, loud monoculture.
Oh,
and
guess what?
They didn't do us any favors here.
Yeah.
And Martok was in the middle of that. But I also like that scene too because it harkens back to Nog and that ability of his to be able to hear kind of like the audible decibel level,
right?
Like naturally, inherently, like as he did when he was deciphering I think it was the audible fragment that they captured when Kira was under assassination threat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've made good use
of that.
That
was kind of neat
for the Ferengi. By the way, the runabouts are kind of fun. It's kind of like a TARDIS. It can be as big or as small on the inside as you want it to be. Like mostly we just see the cockpit. But
crossing the streams.
John. I know, right? But in here you've got how many dozen or so Maquis survivors who fit inside that thing without any problem. Hopefully it's a short trip. And I don't know much about the layout. But I love that there is enough room for a Jeffries tube. I mean, no matter what, in the future, if you are an engineer, you start with the tube and you work your way out, no matter what the project is. Like a house, an apartment building, whatever. No matter what, it's got to have a Jeffries tube. Go from there. So
we don't see enough of ROM in Jeffries tubes.
No, it's
is
true.
My biggest complaint right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And hey, and like a Jeffries tube, courage comes in all sizes. And now that is a Martok that I like. So Martok encouraging the guys to headbutt, kind of, Martok, come on, you're better than that. But this is a Martok that I like because we've seen this fully well-rounded guy who can be the tough warrior, but also has this sensitivity and understanding of other people.
Yeah, I like that too because it's. Yeah, we were getting to the headbutty Klingons, the drunken Klingons, the rowdy Klingons, but that's just their nature. And I like how Martok, he respected Nog's authority on the station. He's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Sorry, we're being jerks. Don't push it, little guy, but I appreciate your guts.
Yeah, well, let's see.
Right,
it's not just about appreciating Nog; it's about appreciating the principle. That's what's so cool about it. It's just it all clicks. That all of that in that scene works. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that Aaron in that scene is just fabulous. I think that he and JG were incredibly they were so synced with each other when it came to their dialogue and their timing.
Yes,
I thought it was fabulous to watch.
Yes.
Really, really, really well done.
Yeah.
So. Let me ask you something, John, and this is something that I almost texted you.
Okay.
So there's a response that I have almost every episode where I feel the urge to text John something, and this was the urge that I kind of suppressed, but I really wanted to text him about it, and I said, "This is actually I pulled this off of my text and I copied it, put it here in the notes." So when Sisko and Eddington reached the surface of the missile base, he didn't put the restraints on him because why?
Right. Yeah.
Right? Sisko doesn't even have a phaser trained on him.
Yeah.
The man who he said doesn't want to fight Sisko, he wants to kill him. So we're good with that.
Right. And they keep reinforcing that because I want to say it's a good 3 times at least that Eddington just points his gun at Sisko.
Right.
Over and over. Come on. This is, you give him the lead pipe. You keep the gun.
That's what I would do. And there's a guy that I want to keep on a short leash. I know that we're gonna get to that in the discussion.
Sure.
But I do like the fact that we drove this entire narrative into this one final scene where he did what he needed to do and he wanted to get out the woman he loved and he died his hero's death, which references for the uniform quite literally. He died the romantic death of the hero of the story that he wanted to be.
Yeah.
An even shorter summary of the last part of the story. Honey, I'm home. Boom. Honey, the Cardassians are home too.
We will get right back to Blaze of Glory, but first, a word from ExpressVPN.
So we are heavily into the month of December, which means you've probably been watching your favorite holiday movies. But what if you go to Netflix and discover your favorite Christmas movie isn't available? What do? That's panic mode, especially during the season. So get ready to have your mind blown. Boom. You can use ExpressVPN to watch any Netflix library in the world.
I mean, think about that. You could just say, take the survey, figure out what Christmas movie is somebody's Christmas movie, and if you don't see it, you just change location and then look for it elsewhere, and then there it is, like magic. So recently I used ExpressVPN. I mentioned this a little while ago on our show to stream a Christmas classic. Maybe not the classic you're thinking. You might be thinking of Elf, which you can find on German Netflix. You might be thinking of Gremlins, which you can find on French Netflix. But no. If you go to UK Netflix, Doctor Who, A Christmas Carol. Yeah, because that's what I need some Matt Smith Christmas in my life. So that's what I went for. And look, here's how easy it is. You go to the app, you hit a little toggle, it shows you a drop down of the countries that are available, and then like that, you just give it a second to reset, and then you are on the internet as if you were in that country. No, you didn't have to go anywhere. You just hit that little toggle. So you hit that button, change location, refresh, and that's it. You're there. So ExpressVPN, it lets you control where you want sites to think you're located. And you can choose from almost 100 countries. So just imagine all the Netflix libraries you can explore. I don't know what other languages you speak, but maybe challenge yourself. Watch a movie in a different language. Let me know how that goes. And of course, it's not just Netflix. ExpressVPN works with any streaming service, Disney+, Hulu, BBC, iPlayer, you name it. There are hundreds of VPNs out there, but the reason I use ExpressVPN to watch movies and shows is because, well, primarily, it is ridiculously fast. There's never any buffering, and you can stream in HD. ExpressVPN works on all of your devices, too. Phones, tablets, media consoles, smart TVs, so you can use it to watch whatever you want on the go or on the big screen.
You know, it's so important, John, that people get the content that they need to have in their lives, because especially in today's age where we are locked down for I don't know how long anymore, but that kind of content can bring so much joy to people, especially during the holiday season. So I think that's a fantastic way of being able to watch what you need to watch when you need to watch it. So if you visit our special link right now, expressvpn.com/missionlog, you can get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Support the show, watch what you want, and get your holiday fix at expressvpn.com/missionlog.
All right, Blaze of Glory. Here we go. Now, I think that you and I will probably, we're going to approach some things from different angles depending here. And this sounds weird, but I want to go down this thread just a little bit that I mentioned in the last segment, and that is about food. Yeah, I know. It's sort of the running gag, and it is from the heart that I do notice food in Star Trek because it's fun. It's one of my passions. But there was a really interesting conversation happening on that runabout. So, yeah, Eddington has a point about growing real food. It's great. And by the way, I'm putting real in finger quotes here for those of you who can't see me. Real food.
Lasers.
Right. Quote unquote, real food is great. There is a sense of pride involved, and that comes down to how you harvest and prepare and enjoy that food. But I hate where he's going with this discussion, and specifically designed to get under Sisko's skin about his dedication to the Federation and its ideals and his whole lifestyle. And obviously that scene is designed to do exactly that. We're using that food as a metaphor to see their differences and see their different values, right? But this is a kind of a conversation that comes up a lot. And the gist of it is this, that one person's real, quote unquote real, is more real than the others. And it's not just about how something is grown or what level of technology is used or not used in the process, especially when we're talking about food, but it's about this implied moral value that comes along with it. And I find that it's really a sort of a dangerous, slippery slope to go down. Because you can also make the argument, you can say like, oh, okay, well, Michael Eddington, you're using some types of technologies. Maybe you're using seeds that were, hydroponically grown from their forebears, or maybe they were flash frozen to get them to you. Maybe you're using technology to till the soil. Maybe you're using technology to help grow and maintain the right environment for those. And maybe you're using different technologies to cook or make additives to that. So it's very sanctimonious for him to then sit there and say to Sisko, what's wrong with you is that you have bought into all of this stuff. And I'm going to use food as the example of that. Like, sure. No. At the end of the day, food is a necessity for all of these people. And it's a little high and mighty to then assume that comes with a moral value on top of it that makes Eddington's choices better, quote unquote, better than Sisko's choices. So we know that clearly the conversation is about more than that. But to me, what a great entry point to get into the differences that these two have. And there are many.
Yeah, I always thought that this example was not so much his analogy of how he grew it. It's under what conditions that he was able to enjoy it. And he basically was saying that I enjoy my food when it is prepared under my blanket of freedom.
Yeah, and every, all of the subtext of all of that is that I'm better than you because of that. Know?
That is the subtext for sure. I 100%
Yeah.
agree. It's being able to choose independently how you want to live without being under the auspices of your government is a better way to live. It's a freer way to live. It is without constraints and without the limitations of this vaunted federation that's supposed to be able to provide you with all of these modern necessities for life, except for real freedom and real ownership of your destiny.
For real. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. And that kind of plays into, say, like the next part of that conversation. Because I think really like the crux of this episode happens in this type of two-man play, which is set in this runabout, which is essentially a stage. And when Sisko is kind of playing chicken with Eddington and saying that you better take the controls or we're both going to die.
Yes.
Really, I mean, like Eddington is a really good mental and tactile strategist. So is he saying that, okay, Ben, I get what you're getting at, but there's no way that you are going to risk your life, your career, the career of the station, the career of or the future of you as a Bajoran emissary, and your life with Jake for me. No way. There's no way. So I'm going to call your bluff. I'm going to play this game, whatever game you're playing. And I'm just going to see where this goes because it rings false to me. That entire scene rings false to me because for the uniform, the seething hatred that Sisko has for Eddington, he bombed a planet.
Yeah.
To get to Eddington. And now he's just going to be like, hey, man, you better take the controls or we're both going to die in the Badlands. Right. And I'm just going to die and I'm going to sacrifice everything because I don't think that you're going to navigate us through that. That is garbage.
Well, is Sisko just that cool or is it just garbage?
It's terrible. Okay. I think it's garbage because it takes the teeth out of that brilliant scene.
It really does. Yeah.
For the uniform. And it really just dilutes the power and the gravitas of that relationship. And it doesn't get better from here.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Oh, no, it doesn't get better from here at all. Yeah. So let's talk about that other dish. I've talked about a dish. I've talked about curried chicken with, textured carbohydrates. Revenge, I see as another dish here.
Yeah, revenge is the dish that is never good cold. But also, victory and revenge, are they the same? Are they sides of the same coin? So I said that I was going to reference that quote from earlier in our observations, and I want to bring it up here in discussion. So when Sisko says, the next time the Klingons refuse to acknowledge your presence, do what a Klingon would do. Confront them about it. If you stand up to them, you earn their respect. And Eddington did this exact same thing. So time and again, he stood up to Sisko because he believed in what he was doing was right, until, as Sisko said, up to the bitter end. So many personality types like Sisko respect conviction, especially the conviction of one's personality, if not just the person themselves. Sisko is a strong A-type. He's an alpha type. And you're attracted to that kind of alpha type character, the strength of one's resolve and what they're willing to do or sacrifice or endure to achieve those goals. I would like to quote that scene between he and Dax at the end of this episode, and it's very, very poignant. Sisko says, There's something attractive about a lost cause. And then Dax responds, maybe you have more in common with Eddington than you want to admit. And Sisko says, maybe. And if you had this conversation at the end of For the Uniform, he and Dax would have had a far different emotional, tonal conversation because Sisko would have been hugely outraged.
Yeah.
Because at the end of that episode, Eddington is a traitor. But at the end of this episode, I don't think Sisko's painting him with that same kind of brush.
See, and I wondered why we went there with Sisko. I mean, look, partly I think that has to serve the Cal Hudson story. If you just completely remove him out of the equation, then I think we would have landed at a different place. But I think Sisko now has to process all of this. It's not just about Eddington the traitor. It's also about his friend. And when he's able to put an emotional value that touches him personally on what just happened, okay, now he has to see it from a different side. Also cleverly put in there by giving Eddington a wife. Now, we knew her for all of about 90 seconds. But she is placed there to give Eddington more layers than we had before. Look, I'm going to land in a different place than Sisko did at the end of this episode. There is a line in here that Eddington says, if you can't have victory, sometimes you just have to settle for revenge. So I think this is the moment where the whole exchange shifts. It shifts that conversation about the Maquis. It's at this point that really, to me, reveals them as terrorists who are fighting a lost cause. And I'm sure I'll come back to the whole lost cause thing a little bit later too. But that's where I focus in this episode. There were and there are many reasons to have sympathy with the Maquis up to a point. But Eddington proved himself for exactly what Sisko was calling him out to be. Now, we can't let Sisko off the hook, like you just said. Sisko bombed innocent people. And we can sort of, again, pat ourselves on the back for our ingenuity that nobody died because it was a biogenic weapon, but it didn't activate then and it wouldn't hurt those people at that moment and blah, blah, blah. But he still did it. And he still sank to Eddington's level and compromised his values, I would say. That was a mission of revenge. And that revenge, he's doing what Eddington is saying here. It's like, well, you didn't get victory. Let's just go for revenge. It's a nice consolation prize, And I think that is a very unprincipled stand to take. I will also follow it up by saying that in that scene, Sisko still cannot laugh in any sort of believable way at all. I'm not buying it, but that's a different story.
And I agree with what you're saying, that John. It's interesting that in one sense, Eddington is feeding Sisko exactly what he wants to hear, but I think by the time we get to the end of the episode and when the ruse is up, how did you feel about it then? Because Eddington essentially says that, I'm sorry, I couldn't really let you in on our plan, but we weren't going to kill anybody. Sorry, not sorry. I just needed to manipulate you to get me to this point so I could save my wife. So exactly where does that leave the Maquis in terms of their quote-unquote terrorist leanings? Because they very well could have been the ones that sent those 30-plus missiles that are, modified with cloaking devices to start this war.
And they know people would believe it.
I was sold on that.
Yeah, they know that people would believe it. Give this any different context, and if the Maquis had put their efforts into a distress signal, then you just wait for another starship to pass by and, have a very measured and reserved conversation in a conference room somewhere saying, hey, these people are under attack, they need help. Well, they're not our responsibility. Yeah, but they're people and they need our help, so we're going to go do it anyway. Boom, end of story, done.
Men like Sisko, and we were talking about like this alpha-type personality, and I think it's something that Eddington's really good at manipulating. He's a man of action. Eddington's a man of action. Sisko's a man of action. They respect that about them, that quality. Sure. There's a certain attraction amongst these personality types. And there was this conversation that I remembered from Space Seed. when Kirk and Scotty were talking about Khan. And Scotty says, should I try a Scottish accent? I think I will.
Dude, hey, this is your show too.
I must confess, gentlemen, I've always had a sneaking admiration for this one. And then Kirk says, he was the best of the tyrants and the most dangerous. They were supermen in a sense. Stronger, braver, certainly more ambitious, more daring. Spock was beside himself when Kirk, Bones, and Scotty were all just fawning over how amazing Khan was. But Kirk said, Mr. Spock, you misunderstand us. We can be against him and admire him all at the same time. And Spock said, illogical. Of course it is. But that's what ambitious men of action bring out in other men who are ambitious and also of action. There's a certain admiration there. And I think Sisko can't help himself when it comes to Eddington. He knows he loathes Eddington up to a point based on his principles, but he also admires him at the same time because Eddington is so deep in his convictions that he's ready to risk anything.
Well,
and he put himself on the line to do it.
Well, maybe we'll see where this friendship goes in the next step. Oh, no, I guess we won't.
Too soon? Not too soon.
Those bathrooms look really dangerous. I hope we never have another episode that goes there again.
So we had 4 the cause, which brought us to 4 the uniform, and now it is 4 the blaze of no.
Yeah, blaze of uniform.
What was it? Okay, hold on a second. Let me bring this into a perspective that I can understand, that you can understand, John. Mm-hmm. Eddington was shot down in a blaze of glory. So, how did you feel about the morals, meanings, and messages of this episode? Where did you land?
Well done. So, look, as an episode here, I quite honestly have been struggling with this one. And it's one where I think I had a very strong reaction the first time I watched it, but then I do with many of them, and I find that my reaction will change a bit on that second or third or fourth viewing as I really dive into the details and pay more attention kind of scene by scene. This is a story that I think only truly holds up in the respect that it completes the story arc of Michael Eddington. It would be too much to sort of ask of this episode if it just stood solely on its own. And there are elements of it that do, but I think its best payoff is when you've seen those other stories. I don't think it's a particularly strong episode, and maybe not for the expected reasons here, because I think there are many great moments, and there is great payoff, but let me try this on you. So, on the plus side, they did try to do something quite epic and balance out high drama character moments with tension and some action. I think all of those elements are there, very apparent for all of us. In the end, the biggest weakness, the biggest sin of this episode is the writing, which took me out of it on too many occasions. And I don't think we're getting the best moments out of some of these scenes. And a lot of what happens is clunky expository dialogue, even that scene with Sisko and Dax at the end. And that one feels like it was tacked on because maybe they were running short, or they just felt like they needed to explain what was going on in the characters' heads to the audience. And I think you're in trouble when you feel like you have to explain something to the audience. I think we've seen great stuff with Kenneth Marshall as Eddington before, but I don't think this episode is one of his best. He comes across as someone who is written as opposed to a character that I just believe is there in that world. Those dialogue scenes with Sisko in the caves, in particular, fighting with the Jem'Hadar, they were mostly not good. There were a few great moments within those, but taken as a whole, very uneven. So either way, this left me a bit cold. I wasn't heavily invested in the Maquis storyline anyway up until now, and I know that they went into this episode with the sole purpose of wrapping it up, but I don't know if it was the best way to do that, to be quite honest. So this is one of those where I want to give him an A for effort. And I want to say, look, the production value is there on the screen. You got some strong actors. You got a strong idea. But in the end, what are you actually doing with it? Mm-hmm. So this is not going to go in my top 10 list. I'll tell you that right now. How about you, Norman?
The one word I don't really want to use when it comes to an episode is serviceable, but I'll use it here because what it is, it ferries the story along to its ultimate conclusion where they're just trying to wrap up Michael Eddington's storyline. And I think that this episode misses a lot of opportunities. And I'm critiquing this episode because at this stage in the game, because I don't know like where the Maquis storyline is going to go from here. I don't know if Rebecca is going to be mentioned at all later on. So I just have to critique it from this standpoint. I think what was lost here and what was so brilliantly set up in For the Cause and For the Uniform is Sisko's unwavering conviction to bring Eddington to justice. He was bent on it. And they used that fantastic allegory in For the Uniform of Les Mis, where you had the Valjean versus Javert dynamic going on, where Javert was, in this case Sisko, was just unrelenting in his pursuit to bring Valjean to justice, to bring Eddington to justice. And it's Valjean's mercy that sent Javert into this suicidal tailspin when they confronted each other for the last time. And they missed that here. They missed that opportunity here.
Yeah. Because
it was such a huge comparison in their previous encounter and in For the Uniform. So if Eddington in some way forgave Sisko for all he has done to him in the Maquis and the bombing of that planet, in For the Uniform, I think that would have been a really good way for Eddington to go out so that Sisko has to deal with this kind of emotional time bomb and where he's going to place that. I just think that this episode became too much of a paint-by-numbers wrap-up instead of what could have been an incredibly memorable send-off for Eddington and for Kenneth Marshall.
Yeah, right. Well, let's talk about morals, meanings, messages. I mean, I think I can kind of break these down for character, and I'll go from maybe least to most important here. Okay, so Nog gets a message, stand up to bullies. But more important, really, than that is earn respect through the performance of your duties. Pretty clear cut for him. And at least he's dealing with a guy like Martok, who actually knows how to show respect when it is earned. For Eddington, sometimes, protection and compassion are more important than principle. Okay, maybe, but we don't really know what he learned because he's not around to share that with us. But let's talk about Sisko here, because we land with this interesting ambiguity of the conversation that he has with Dax. I think because we reference Cal, Sisko has to take away that the bad guy isn't necessarily all bad. People can be motivated by a variety of factors. But didn't Sisko already know this, or shouldn't he have already known this, especially through his friend Cal? So did Sisko really learn anything new by this experience? I don't know that that's the case. Now, when it comes to Dax, because she's the one sitting there having this tete-a-tete with him, I disagree with Dax's assessment that there is no better death for a, quote, romantic than dying in defense of a lost cause. I don't think that's the case, and I reject the idea that dying for what you believe in somehow makes that better. Because you can believe in terrible, destructive things. You can believe in things that endanger the people around you, which is precisely what Eddington did. And I have to side with Sisko here when he says in one of those very good scenes in the shuttle, you drove the Cardassians right into the seat of power of the Dominion. You caused this. And it is because of that ideological buy-in to what he was doing without being able to see the big picture, without being able to have the compassion and the foresight about the people that he claims to care for, especially when you add a wife into the mix, especially when you add friends in there who just, by the Maquis's own words, just want to live their lives, just want to farm their tomatoes and grow up.
That's actually a point that I have not yet considered, John, and I'm glad you brought that up, because where I was leaning more towards in the morals, meanings, and messages of this episode is going back to what I focused on when we were doing for the uniform was the idea and the definition of how we define hero, or how does Sisko define a hero? Is the word hero so rigid that it cannot encompass all that came before the most heroic act of all, self-sacrifice for others? Because everything that comes before what you did ultimately to create yourself in your own hero mythology is, that's conversation. Mm-hmm. It's the very last action that is what's most important. So I believe that there's a reason why that Sisko is so infuriated with Eddington. It's because he actually does believe in what he and the Maquis stand for. Now, follow me around on this one. Up to a point. That's a very specific quote, unquote, up to a point. One of the reasons why I say this is because how deeply hurt Ben was and is about Cal Hudson. That, I think, was probably the best reference that they did for this episode, is bringing Cal Hudson's memory back in.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Because without that, we lose a lot of the ambiguity that Sisko has about Eddington. So Cal Hudson was a man who he revered, and Ben was so hurt by it, you could tell that he still honors him, still honors his memory. So you have Cal Eddington, you have the Maquis. They're all fighting for that fight that Sisko wants to fight, the one that's free from politics, the one that's free from diplomacy and rules and regulations. Sisko, I think, resents the Maquis for having the freedom that he doesn't have, because he's an attaché for Starfleet, and he is the Bajoran emissary. So he's constrained from acting the way I think he wants to act and being able to react to situations where he thinks that he can be most effective, but he has to follow the protocols. So Starfleet captains are very similar to Eddington in wanting to be that romanticized, over-glorified hero archetype. The one who saves the galaxy from insurmountable odds time and again, barely surviving by the skin of their teeth. James T. Kirk made a career of that. Picard did up to a point, but Sisko hasn't really. He's sequestered on Deep Space Nine, and he's not exploring space in that same way. And I think that he has a little bit of resentment when it comes to not sharing in that grand legacy of blazing trails and, saving universes and coming back with these grand tales of doing so, being that hero.
Yeah.
But there's only really one way, John, that I can truly explain, I think, the end of Eddington's career, the truest way that I can wrap up probably one of my favorite characters up to a point in Deep Space Nine, and that's Michael Eddington. And if I may, I'm going to nod to his nod to Les Mis to finish up. Do you hear the Maquis singing the song of Angry Ben? It is the music of the rebels who are on the run again. When the vicious Jem'Hadar gave them a beating like a drum, they were lucky to have a hero like Eddington.
Ladies and gentlemen, dinner and a show. Norman Lau, don't forget to tip your waiters. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer, Rod Roddenberry. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Empok Nor.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. If you kill off Kenneth Marshall's character, Would you describe that as a crawling of the herd? End transmission.
Podcast.roddenberry.com, the Roddenberry Podcast Network.